Hello, chat, and anyone that may be watching this later on a future date. I am Coach Neptune, an up-and-coming coach for Overwatch. I'm currently coaching a team known as Univa, and I decided I would decide to tell them all about NUMBANI and why this map is complete cheeks and how you can play it properly, because it is going to be in the Face It Season 8 map pool. So it will be relevant. The map will be getting played. So it's important to know what to do on it because sometimes attacking on this point can feel completely impossible. And I'll show you how to deal with that. So for starters, map's been reworked. It's addressed a couple of the major issues with the map, namely a little bit of first point, the attacker spawn is not as far away from the point, so fights will happen a little bit more frequently. Second point, they moved this bus. It really didn't do too much. I mean, like it's like useful, I guess. Th this like connecting path was very nice to add. It gives a lot more options for attacking third and defending second, actually. So, we have Charming Chair in the chat. Hello, how you doing today? So we'll start simple here. We have the first point. Now, spectating in game, I can't get it the best angle, but basically, when you'll basically see defenders doing one thing on NUMBANI first, and that's going to be holding this back high ground for the most part. They can be holding this high ground too. You know, it's doable. They could play it. So the thing is just that attacking these high grounds can feel nigh impossible at times. So, you know, we could draw our little crosses here. Capitology has a video on this if it's something that you're interested in learning more about. But basically, every single map in Overwatch, every single area of the map can kind of be divided into like a grid. Now, I can't get a high enough angle to draw the grid over this point, but you know, basically the center is going to be the point. So for the most part, you can kind of just see that the point is kind of in the middle, and generally being in the middle is where you don't want to be. I mean, because it's like if you're standing on point, you can have people shooting you from here, from here, from there, from there, from there, from there. It's not good. You don't want to be standing here. If you get stuck standing on point, it is a bad thing to whichever team is not controlling the high ground. Because if you have four high ground angles looking at you, you're dead. There's just nothing you can do about it. So for attacking, your main goal is to push this high ground and this high ground. Now, how do we push these? There's plenty of ways to do so, because your main routes are as follows. You can either, let's pull out the pen, you can either attack from this area, which you'll need to play a character that has vertical mobility to get up there. Any character can route up these stairs and fight this high ground. Let's draw that a little better. Fight this high ground. Or you could take this, take this bottom area and then run around here, either to the point or back towards this back area. Now, as I've said, attacking the point, generally not the best idea. So, or you could go across the cliff side and then you can attack the stairs or the back of the height. So these are where you can approach from attack. I mean, yeah, you can run it down main. I don't really suggest that. I don't think that's a great idea unless you're London Spitfire and want to play Reinhardt TP 5 people onto the point and stand in the corner and pray you get a tick. Don't do that. If a team that I'm coaching does that, I will yell at them for it. So defenders are basically, you know, and even defending on this map can feel weird at times because yeah, you have fantastic high grounds to position on, but the problem is the very second that your team drops off of the high ground, the point is lost. Because once you have dropped, especially from the back high ground, how do you you pushing into you have to walk through a choke to get to point, while there's a high ground angle looking at you from here and potentially here as well. So when you're defending, you need to make sure you stay on this height no matter what. And attacking, your goal is to get them off of that height no matter what. So the high grounds control the game on this first point. So generally, what I know what my team always does is we like to just play Winston on a brig on this map. We play it all the time, where we usually end up being like Winston and Ana come down here. Winston tries to take this corner, and then hit scan will walk out here. Generally Ash. Thank you, Alex. But and then we'll have like Tracer route in the back. So where the final positions of our attack basically end up being as follows. They end up turning into, we try to get Winston staged here, with Ana down here looking at him. We have our hit scan and our brig either go up. So hit scan goes up here. Brig can kind of float to either, depending on what the enemy team are doing. And then we'll have Tracer like back here. That's generally the way that my team likes to attack this, or at least my last team, because in the current team we have never really played on NUMBANI that much, but I presume we would attack in a very similar fashion, where the idea is basically if the enemy tank is standing up here, our hit scan needs to just backs off, and then Winston takes this this corner for free, which is a free stage to potentially go for a nade hit right here with Tracer. So it basically is the exact same thing of everything. Yeah, basically the same, right, Alex? So it's very much a divide and conquer for this first point for attacking it, because defenders are most likely going to be playing Winston on a brig. It's frankly the best comp to play on this map, where generally it'll be like Ana, brig, and hit scan will position up here. Basically, their job is do everything in their power to stop Winston from getting here, because normally and then the tank will hold here, because it's like Winston on a brig. If you have your team all take this height, where you're just like, oh yeah, that height's free, we could take it. And then it opens you up for potential nade plays with, just anti-nade Winston in, your team's dead, unless you Suzu it. And even if you do Suzu it, there's still a chance that your team dies anyway because you're in the line of fire from hit scan. So, up here is still you don't want to send your team up here basically. You can send one or two people up here, absolutely. I mean, if this is completely uncontested, yeah, that's space that you can get. So, meanwhile, this back area is important to take. You want to send your flankers here. Like if you're running Kiri Lucio here, you're probably going to want to have your Lucio split with your flex DPS, usually your Tracer, Genji. Alex says who should be forcing point? No one should be forcing point on this first point. On this first point, you cannot capture the point at all until the enemy team have been forced out. Once the enemy team are forced off of this high ground and they have to drop back here, you could maybe put your tank on this corner here, and then they have to run, and the enemy team has to walk through a choke point with two high ground angles looking at it in order for them to try and recontest, which I'm sorry, you're not going to do that while you have, because you've already been forced off the height. That means that your resources have already been used. You just can't walk through that choke point with no resources. It's impossible. Unless you have a Reinhardt there that just walks your team in, which that's not gonna happen. And even then, once Ryan walks in, he takes two more steps forward onto the point, then he's got angles on him anyways. So it's still bad. Basically, so back to the Kirilu thing, you're gonna have your Tracer and Lucio are gonna route back here. They're basically always gonna be routing back here. unless you like do some funky stuff. Like if you have like a ball or something, you can have your ball come back here. It's like anyone who can move fast horizontally is probably going to be attacking from this angle because they can go through this room, they can go through the cliffside, and then usually a defender is going to want one or two people guarding this area, generally a Tracer or a Genji. I've had a team that I played on once try to play Sombra here because they would hack this health pack and just play Sombra to play off this health pack. Because, like, I don't need blinks, I got Translocator. If I get forced out, I'm just going to be out anyways, and I got the health pack, so if it's just a lone Tracer, I can fight that. We ended up scrapping that idea eventually. We tried it. We ended up not liking it, but it's still a thing that you may be running into. Simply because someone needs to scout down here. If someone's going down here, it scouts the room and it scouts the cliffside. So if you have one person guarding over here, you can basically see you see more than half of the spots that people can be coming from. So you can kind of then adjust your game plan accordingly depending on the fight that's being taken. So basically, then you have your horizontal flanker over here, your balls, your tracers. They go this way because you can get the pinch over here. You have a vertical mobility character. Your Echoes, your Genjis, your Winstons, your Divas are going to be up here. They're going to fight this corner because if the enemy team is positioned back here. If the enemy team is positioned up here, it becomes slightly easier because you have this angle to fight for, and it's not as bad for you. But you still ultimately need to you can't skip any steps at all. You need to stage, you need to scout, stage, execute. You always have to do that, no matter what. Because if you skip your staging and you just rush to the execution and you just jump at the enemy team, they're gonna you're gonna take way too much damage on your engage. You're barely gonna force anything reasonable, while all your cooldowns will be forced. So you need to you can like have your Winston go over here or something. Basically, you need to adapt to where is the enemy team's backline playing, how do we route to them. It's gonna feel awful, but your timing needs to be perfect to handle this. Now, the addition of Wu Yang to the game might make this a bit easier because a Wu Yang can kind of just like stand down here and handle literally any angle that the enemy team is taking. So, Wu Yang may be a good character for this. So, basically as attack, force them off the height. As defense, do literally everything in your power to not give the height. And the point basically is completely irrelevant until the fight is lost on defense. So then once we take this point, usually you're probably going to need to use ults. It's very rare that you can take this point in like one or two fights before ults are built up. Generally, your nano Winstons, your nano Winstons, your nano blades, your primal rages, getting a good beat maybe on your engage, pulsing a support. Things like that are going to be your win condition for the point. And if it's like an OT situation and like you need to stay touching the point, then things like Bob, Primal, Nano Winston, Tracer can all like stagger touches on the point. If you have a Venture, you could do Venture. You just gotta stagger touches on the point and just hope that your hit scan kills things in the meantime. Moving on to second point, it becomes a little bit easier for the attackers. I would say this second point's pretty attacker focused or attacker favored just because of how far away the defender spawn is. Like, look how far you gotta run to get all the way to the spawn room. It's so much. Afterwards, basically, attackers, obviously, they have to push the point. So, good spots to fight for defenders on this point are going to be very similar places. Before, like, I see teams hold close on this corner a lot, put their, like, on a brig Ash on this high ground here, and that becomes a really difficult angle here. Are you playing corners here? For defense, you can absolutely play corners here for defense. Generally, you will play the corners. There's really, like, the only time that you wouldn't play a corner would be like, for example, if your team has like, if you're playing like some sort of spam comp, if your team is for some reason, if your coach has let your team play Sigma, Junkrat, Pharah, or Zen or something like that, then you may want to hold this area. Just stand behind your Sig Shield and throw damage forwards right here. Because, ultimately the enemies will have to route past you eventually. But I really don't recommend that. Spam heroes aren't that good. Especially not on this map that can be very hit scan oriented because it's like nothing stopping like an Ashe or a Widow from just like peeking this truck and just like completely, just frankly completely shutting down your entire team if you play this long sight line. So ideally, again, the high grounds are very, very powerful. Generally, your backlines are going to be set up on these high grounds. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but the point, obviously, you have to force the point, and you have to find a way to dislodge the enemy team from this high ground. Because if an Ashe, Ana, and Brig all stand on this height, you're never going to push it with one person. You need to get creative on your engages. I've seen teams that that just set their Winston on this corner and they just anchor the hell out of him with Tracer like just around. I think I usually see Tracers like over here to stop a Tracer from going for a flank. So it becomes really, really difficult to dislodge this Winston because you just have to anchor down on the win. You just have to play to force him out, and it can be kind of difficult just because this swing is really tough, especially if you've like pushed the point to like here and you don't have the point for cover as you walk. Then it can be really, really difficult to get past this corner. So that's where you just have to get creative on your engages, use your ults. But hold on one moment, chat. We gotta ban a viewer bot. Get him out of here. All right, we're back. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, this dislodging from the high ground ultimately are your game plan for attacking here. You can either stage a dive like this and have your tracer have been set already. You can have them like go around like all the way. You can do that, especially if you're on Lucio as well and you just have the time to set for that, or maybe you just have to wait for that because maybe you just can't dislodge this with your Winston. Or maybe you're not even playing Winston. Maybe you're playing ball. If you're playing ball, this may become significantly easier because you just roll around and no one can really chase you except an enemy tracer. And an enemy tracer is not going to do enough by the time you make this rotation up the stairs and then you can roll the backline. It forces them out, your backline can swing. So, we have our flank routes are kind of mediocre because they don't access the enemy backline, at least if they're staged up here. It doesn't really stage their backline. You can't stage their backline very well, at least not with a horizontal mobility character. Maybe you can put your Winston over there if you want to get like extra creative. You can have your Ana and Winston run through the back door and just run out in this like courtyard area with the Mega and have your Winston jump from here. That could be creative while your Ashe or something swings from here with the Brig. You could do that. You can get really creative, and you're going to have to get really creative, frankly. Simply because trying to play this conventionally is not going to work out well for the attackers. And you'll see some goofy stuff here. You obviously will, and then if the enemy team is obviously if it's not a Winston on a Brig Ashe Tracer mirror, which very great chance that it won't be. There's a good chance that Unova won't even be playing that on this map. We may be playing Diva Echo Tracer or something. And the new, and also, I'll say Jetpack Cat might revolutionize this map simply because Jetpack Cat will be able to take any tank and just plop them up here, or take an Ana and plop her up here. Is this a good map for Jetpack Cat? I think that it will be, Alex. Obviously, it'll depend on how good Jetpack Cat ends up being as a character, but I think Jetpack Cat absolutely has merit here. So it'll frankly depend, because if Jetpack Cat ends up getting played as a flex support and has has the healing numbers to sustain something, you could even do like Jetpack Cat Lucio, Jetpack Cat Brig, not Brig, Juno, and just like put like a Ramatra up here and then speed them across and just no fear run this down. Or like you can Jetpack Cat, like, Jetpack Cat High Noon, what they did. I think they did that in the trailer. I don't know. Up here, what are they going to do? These problematic high grounds will be less of an issue with Jetpack Cat in the picture. Now, you may ask, well, Coach Neptune, what about Lifeweaver? And Lifeweaver is absolute. So what I think Lifeweaver would be a great character on this map, specifically in ranked play, just because if you have that Reinhardt one trick that just won't do anything on this map, you can give him a Lifeweaver pedal, either like here for first point. You could put it over here for second point. Just give your Rhine that verticality. But I highly recommend against playing Rhine on this map, unless Jetpack Cat revolutionizes it. Who knows? I don't know. We'll have to see. But for now, I'm just giving the raw basics and the core understanding of the map. But I know another thing that you can do as well is that the tank and the supports can kind of take this corner and run across here and basically try to fight in this staircase with Brig Winston in the staircase, trying to duel out anyone that the enemy team has to just force their way onto this high ground. I've seen teams do that. My team has done that in the past. That used to be our go-to strategy until ults were built. So that's how that first corner generally will end up working. Your horizontal mobility characters really don't have great staging opportunities unless they go through this way, through the staircase, which anyone who goes through this staircase is going to be met with a Brig right here. So, make of that what you will. Then once you push past here, realistically, yeah, you're going to have to carry this area no matter what. But once you take this corner, realistically, all of this space becomes open space for the attackers. Most defenders are not going to be going this way. The only flank route to get through this direction to get behind is going to be either from the high ground, or they have to run past your team's LOS to get there. I'll show where it is. So like the only real flank route to get behind you as the backline would be this way. Or if they get into this room, which they're gonna like basically no one can go unscouted, get this flank. No one can do that. Or they can go through the high ground, which, yeah, you can go through the high ground. And yeah, this is scary, but also if someone peeks this high ground, this amazingly placed little flap here completely disconnects LOS from their backline. So if you swing out this door, you just hit them. So, we'll take a look at this final area here. So generally, and the point always has to make this turn. We know how the point moves, I would presume. I'd assume you're not looking for an in-depth guide on NUMBANI if you didn't know how the map worked at a fundamental base level. I'm sorry, new players, if you're watching this. This is just unfortunately not a resource for you. But there are plenty of guides out there to help you out. We love new players. So, oh, don't mind me look at my start menu. Damn, guess you'll leave. Bye, Alex. Damn, you're telling me you haven't played the game for a decade, even though the game's only been out for 9.5 years? Despicable. Brand new player might as well be a toddler. Anyways. But yeah, like, this back high ground is generally where the enemy backline will be playing. You may see them play in this underneath area if attacking team is running a wrecking ball, I'd recommend backlines play either in this area or in this room, simply because it makes it harder for a ball to slam. But what you need to do here as the attackers, I mean, your off angle pressure is insane. You have this staircase. If you have a tracer, you can just kind of blink, blink, and you're in this room that doesn't have that the enemy team really can't get you out of easily without really committing to it. You know, your Winston can be on point. You have staging. You can hit any of these heights that you want. You can put your backline up here even to have them walk up those stairs, swing out this way, and now it's kind of even. We have our backline here, enemy backline here, and then that just kind of turns the bottom area fully into no man's land. No, just no player is gonna be there, and if they are, they're gonna be getting hard looked by the entire lobby, teammates and enemies, because they're gonna be getting attacked by the enemy and peeled by their teammate. So, for the most part, we kind of can only attack either straight at them or from this angle or from behind them. So you'll need to stage accordingly. And maybe you just don't care. Maybe your team is running Zarya Reaper, and the enemy team is running running Diva, and you just say, well, we don't really care. I'm just gonna put my Zarya right here and force the point, and the Diva has to go eventually. Then that's something you can do. You can definitely, even the core gameplay aspects of the theory of team play will still apply. The way that heroes interact with each other still applies. Just because Zarya can beam down Diva through DM doesn't necessarily. I mean, it even though Zarya has no vertical mobility without jump ups or sync jumping, but no one will sync jump in game. Sync jump setups are so time consuming and inconsistent, they're never going to get used in game. They may be used for staging pre-fights, but they will never get used mid-fight. And if you see a Zarya sync jump you mid-fight, well, she deserves the win. So, you can definitely take the matchup into consideration in terms of how your team attacks this angle, whether your backline wants to play, way in the back so that your tank can just fight on this corner. That's an option. You can do like a 3-2 split where you send your Lucio Tracer over here, your Kiri, Winston, and like Sojourn up here, and then you just try to like swing, swing, swing. That you could do that. You have lots of options on attack here, and it will just straight up eventually be. It's the same idea. Try to route onto the enemy backline, stage for them, and you just have to land the dive. Your timing just has to be perfect. And I'll talk about this room a little bit. This room realistically is only going to be used by DPS characters or Lucio. I would never see a Brig standing in here. I would never see any. Frankly, I will never see any other support or tank really standing in this room unless you have like done an engage here. You get like booped by the Brig, and you land back here, and then you have to use this room to escape. No tank is gonna be in here otherwise, unless like team fight happens in here. Like if you stack 5 in here and then they jump in and nano Winston, rah, they get you. But that's why we don't stack as 5. So those are your angles of attack. You have to. Oh, bye guys. Skirmish ended. Skirmish ended. VOD review over. Hope you learned a lot. Okay, bye. No, I'm just kidding. We restart. Bye, Alex. And you take your matchup into consideration. How does your comp interact with the enemy team's comp? How can we best use the angles that we have, being this angle, and this angle? Those are going to be your major angles. Then you have like the littler, kind of less important angles being like from here and here. Which spots should our characters be standing in order to effectively deal with the enemy team? What's their tank on? Does our tank have a favorable matchup into them? Is it a mirror matchup? Because if it's a mirror matchup, well, it then all depends on our skill in terms of the way we can set and the way that we can force cooldowns out of the enemy. Now let's flip this. We're defending this. We're defending this last corner. Realistically, this walkway is almost never going to get held unless the enemy team is running like a brawl composition and can't realistically fight this height, like this angle, and everyone is fully scouted because a tracer can always route up this staircase really quickly, and then as a direct, it is right there on your back line. It's really scary. You probably aren't holding this. You could be holding this corner though. Your tank could be here. If you're playing like, if you're playing Brawl, you could be putting your like D.Va here, you could put your Ramatra here, you could put your Sigmas here. Even Winston can be here. Maga can be here. But it ultimately is again a thing of how do we stage the fight? Where are they coming from? You may even set if you're playing Winston, you could even be up here, be like, okay, they're coming from main. I jump onto here. You're poking them a little bit. You're poking them a little bit. Is anyone splitting from the team? And then you drop. And it's just a good scouting angle. I would always, always, always have my flex DPS over here. Simply because, I mean, especially if you're playing Brig as well as your main support. If you're playing like Wu Yang or something as main support, I would frankly 100% have a Tracer or a Genji in this area because we do not want this to get taken at all. Because for like Ana Wu Yang, that's two long range supports. We just don't have a way to stop people from getting to you. Now, so it's just a thing of you need to prevent this from happening in the first place, which is why we'd set someone here, probably our Tracer, to deal with that. We can even set our tank here if the enemy team wants to try and set this for some reason. I don't see why they would, but it's like an option. Like I guess it's an option. Like if their tank is stuffing you in this room, yeah, you can like send your like Ashe up here, Dyna the tank, and then back. It's like an option, but you can set your tank reasonably. We'll use blue for tank positionings. Tank can be like here, here, or if the point is like about to be capped, they can be standing right behind the point. But the point kind of changes how you play a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot of bit. It completely changes the way that you play because Overwatch is an objective-based game. If the point is like all the way up here, we're not setting back here. And vice versa. If the point's back here, we're not setting for close holds because if we set for a close hold, then it opens up the enemy team to sneak a tracer behind us and cap the point. And we've just C9, oh no, we're going to be put in the next Overwatch cringe compilation. We don't want that. But yeah, for the most part, playing as tank, you realistically have two good positionings here. I mean, I guess you can include this, but like more often than not, you're going to be the one that's going to stop the enemy team from just forcing point here. Because you have this nice corner. Or if they're going to stage for height, you can stop them from staging height. So that's our tank positionings. We'll use pink for our backline. And by our backline, I mean we're either set here or underneath here. So really the two spots that our backline can play. And then we'll set our flex DPS. We'll use yellow. The flex DPS is either set here or here, just depending on how the enemy is staged and if we've scouted their flankers. For the most part, that's going to be almost universal. There really aren't too many options for defenders here. It's pretty structured. Can you get creative? Absolutely, you can get creative. You can you could play like I don't know. Let me cook something here. Like, let's say we're on ball or something. We can like put our ball like underneath this bridge so that the enemy team walk out this way, and then we just roll through them and then slam, and out the entire enemy team is slammed in the middle of the open, and we're all set for that. And then we get them. Which you could do that. It's an option. Ball's kind of an anomaly. I don't really like talking about him too much just because ball comps play so fundamentally different than most other comps in Overwatch, just because of the ability to take engages literally anywhere you want, anytime you want, because of how fast it is. where Ball kind of runs around, is very self-sufficient, picks up a lot of health packs, and your team kind of basically acts without a tank until it's time to go. But yeah, so it'll obviously depend on how the point is. Like, and if it's like a touch situation, you can even like set your Ana all the way back here because you have like a little bit of cover on this little post thing. You can see your tank. And this last corner is it's kind of pretty cut dry how you play it because like the cap is right here. You have to play to stop it. There is no, oh, let's just let the point move a little bit while we shoot them like we have on this corner. We don't have that luxury on this corner. So we'll go to last point here. Attacking on the last point. The point has to get through this giant like tunnel, followed by this sharp corner, followed by this other sharp corner that's got a whole bunch of people that has a whole bunch of angles on it and no cover before it finally caps right here. So let's check our angles that we have access to. So the areas that we can attack from. We can attack from up here. We can attack from main. We can attack, we can come out this way from the room. So like that's an area if they're holding close, but then it'll end up swinging into like this, or we can go through the room to swing out like this. Ultimately, that's the same angle. So I'll just, reasonably, that's where the attacks are. So it'll then depend. Now, this point is, frankly, you can swap off of dive on this point. Brawl can be fantastic on this point, simply because dive doesn't have the best spots to stage. I mean, yeah, you can like jump your Winston way far, like over to here, into this nook, heal him up. Sure, like you can do that. It can be annoying. You can have your Winston go to the height and drop, bubble the tank, jump away. It's like, you can do things here on Winston, but other tanks work here very well. Ramattra works great because the point needs to be contested. There aren't too many angles here. Diva can be good here simply because she's just kind of pseudo brawl dive. So you have that mobility to get to the back line over here if you need to, or you can fight the tank on point if you need to. But yeah, so for the most part, you're going to be sending your flex DPS on this. You're going to be sending a flanker on this side. Your hit scan is going to be set up here, and then your tank is going to be pushing point, most likely. Or if you were able to cap and then get a really big push going, actually, see, the thing is, even forward hold, now that I'm thinking more, forward holds really aren't that good because these are the spawn doors now. You used to be able to stand in those rooms. You can't do that anymore. So forward holds are really, really hard. Most of the time, you are going to have one good shot at pushing this simply because the cart will act as cover. But like if the point gets stuck here, it becomes significantly more difficult to push than if the point is right here or right here because your tank can use it as cover as they walk and your backline can use it as cover as they walk. So you basically need to dislodge people from their angles, whether by flanking, taking the angles here, taking the angles here, or supporting your hit scan here. Now, this is also one of those points where you can just London Spitfire force point GG go next, and it could work. You're going to be under a lot of heat from here simply because you're going to have to deal with this angle, you have to deal with this angle, and you're going to have to deal with this angle-ish. And someone could even get creative and swing out like this. Like if you're on Reinhardt, I would swing this as like Cassidy every day. So it ultimately is just a thing of use the point as cover as you push. You still need to set your angles. They are going to be really, really long angles. Like if the enemy team is staged back here, if they have like Ana Break Ash right here, do we want to set our Tracer over there? Probably not. But what we could do, we could put our own Ash over here. That's a good angle. Yeah, it's pretty scary, So it's a thing of like you're gonna have to wait to swing until your tank goes, but like it's doable. It's basically, as I always spout, play for your hero's effective range. So we'll say, if the enemy team is playing here, we send our Tracer this direction and our Ashe this direction. Or if the enemy team is playing over here, we set our Tracer in this direction, and then our Ashe probably just plays around point. And like eventually you may be able to swing up here in like in a dream world you can. And then, if you can get that angle, you may just win the round on the spot. Meanwhile, tank and backline are just kind of stuck on point for the most part. But as is every single point, you may hit a wall, get creative. Do do shit that you think is dumb because it will not be dumb on this map. Send your Ramatra around the cliffside to run down the I don't know, to run down this Alari that for some reason we can't get rid of in this room. I don't know. Do things that sound weird if as long as the thought process has merit and the goal has merit and is reasonably achievable through it. You know, as is the thing of, they're gonna have range here. They probably have range here, or they have range here. But reasonably, we also have range. We got to play to our effective range. This high ground is kind of the saving grace of the entire point for attackers. This room is good for our flankers. It's good for staging. So, and just force and tank force point when you can. Look for the dive when you can. But it's going to be very, very hard to stage it, and it's gonna feel terrible, frankly. Like if you're still on the Winston on this point, it's gonna feel bad. Just because it's gonna feel impossible for your Tracer to set sometimes. But you need to just be adaptable to the enemy team. And again, weigh your matchups. Maybe you just run it down on Zarya Vendetta and just who cares? Jump at the back line. Bubble the Vendetta. Maybe she kills two. She probably will right now this patch because she's broken as fuck. But we'll assume once she's nerfed. Who knows? We'll move to defense here. Defending this map, this point, I kind of explained it a lot on the attacker side, but the angles that we have to watch from, the attacking angles are from here, and from here. So we want to set our team to deal with those accordingly. For example, are they always +1ing their Ashe with a Brig over here? Maybe we set our backline over here. Here, I'll keep those arrows drawn, and I'm going to change color to blue for our team, for defender team. If there's always like an Ashe Brig getting +1, yeah, my face cam's covering. Hold on, my face cam's covering it. Fudge! I just drew a line on my Streamlabs and moved my camera a little bit. There we go. I hope that I didn't do too much. I hope I didn't block too much with my face cam. I considered turning it off, but I decided not to. But if there's an Ashe Ashe Brig over here all the time, maybe we even consider setting our tank over here. That's an idea. If we have a Winston, Ashe Brig goes here, bam. No, you don't. Then it does open up this area for them for the entire enemy team as well. So it's just that thing of tanks are great at shutting down at area denial basically and shutting down an angle completely. So where our backline sets heavily depends on what the enemy team wants to do. Now, granted, it also depends on what we want to do because generally what it is the attackers. I'm going to write this down. Is that attackers will attackers determine when the fight happens. I'm left-handed and I'm drawing with my right hand and a mouse, so this is great. So the attack determines when the fight happens, and the defenders determine where the fight happens. There. Attackers determine when, defenders determine where. So, where do we want to take the fight? Do we want to take the fight in this on the point right here? Then we set our tank like right here. Do we want to stop the cart from even passing the corner? We set our tank here and our backline here for good LOS of our tank. Do we want to play to make this angle as scary as possible because they have him on one of their DPS players on the DPS roster, and we're terrified. We don't want this angle to be easy for them. Well, then we set our flex DPS over here. Maybe we +1 them with a Brig or a Lucio. Or we have like a Wu Yang orb, because if we just want to keep our backline here, we can like Wu Yang orb someone over here. Does our hit scan want to do like a power play? Set them like up here, right here, or like right here, just depending on, and it's just like, do we want to play to deny an engage? Do we want to play to kill them on their engage? Do we want to counter dive? Do we want to hit them first? Do we want to just make them brawl out the point? Do we want to force our tank out? We have a lot of options, and also as defenders, we have options for close holding. This is a pretty nasty position for our tank to be able to hold. If the point is like right here, tank can use it for cover. Backline can play like here or like over here. And like it's scary if the backline plays here because there's very, very little cover other than the tank themselves. It's scary, but it's playable. Because we can play because like we have aggressive options as well. And it just, again, it depends on our team comp. It depends on what the enemy team are trying. It depends on the enemy's team comp. But we ultimately get to force the enemy team to do what we want them to do. The only thing that we don't have control over as the defenders are when the enemy team decide that they want to go. That is the only thing that we cannot manipulate as the defenders. So, we can make the fight happen here. We can make the fight happen, all the way here as the cart rolls up to here. If we wanted to, we can make the fight happen here. We can make the fight happen on this corner. We can make the fight happen on this walkway. We can even, make the fight happen right before the cap if we really want to. Now, granted, I would probably try to stage mini engagements here where we can, set here, do some damage to them as they walk, but we don't really want to stay here. We don't really want to have the fight finish here. Then we, set again for here. We fight them again like this. And we probably win. We probably want to finish setting the fight for here. Or like, let's say they're on like Ramatra and they're just gonna run at us no matter what we do. So we're gonna set here, make them run at us. They're gonna use some cooldowns. We run away to here, make them run at us, use some cooldowns, and we back to here, and then we end up taking the fight here because now they have no more cooldowns. That's an option. And it's just we just need to decide, do we want to get aggressive this fight? Do we want to play defensive this fight? Where do we take it? I basically said the same thing this entire time because Numbani, like every other map in Overwatch, is about taking an angle, clearing the angle, clear the angle, take the angle, push the angle. That's what Overwatch is at its core. It's what every single map does, every single point, every sub point of every single map in the game. Because like no matter what, objective is in a specific position, and you need to it is the defender's job to take positions to make it hard for the attacking team to push the point. I highly recommend that any team play Winston on a Brig Ashe Tracer on this map. It is a very, very versatile comp for this map, simply because Brig is very, very good at plussing a Tracer on an angle while also being able to deny a dive or an engage. Ana is very, very good with Winston because you can nano your Winston to help him build Primal. You have ranged healing on him, and you have anti-nade because anti-nading with a Winston in is one of the most lethal combos in Overwatch. Dynamite can basically be used as kind of like a mini anti-nade. Bob is insane at being able to force point. He puts out so much pressure, takes so much space. In addition to Coach Gun also being able to be used to prevent an engage, and also you can take fights at a very long distance. It helps the team out immensely in a poke phase. Tracer, just universally good character. Can mark angles really effectively, can take angles really effectively, can be basically anywhere on the map she wants really quickly. And let's say if your team can't play Winston for some reason, you're just say, oh, my tank player doesn't play Winston, but they play Diva. Well, that makes things a little bit harder for you if you're playing into the Winston on a break. It doesn't make it impossible, but then at that point, I would recommend that you try to play a team comp that can play very, very, very self-sufficient. Like Kiri Lu is a backline I'll highly recommend if you're going to play Diva. I'll always recommend Tracer on this map. I frankly don't think that, at least in the current state that Overwatch is in, as of this stream/video, you there really isn't a hero that does it like Tracer, unless we count Vendetta, who is overtuned right now. So Czar Vendetta is technically a comp you can play on this map, but that's just because Czar Vendetta is broken right now, not necessarily because the comp has a lot of merit. It is simply Vendetta is good, Zarya good with Vendetta. But you want to if you want your tank to be able to take and hold corners very well. So basically, a tank that can hold a corner. Winston's good for holding corners. Diva's good at holding corners. Ram's good at holding corners. Hazard's good at holding corners. Things like that. But you also want to make sure that they have mobility on the first and second points, because if you have no mobility, you can just get screwed on every single point. Because if you get stranded, you are cooked. And so you want to then combo it with, you will always want a long range DPS in addition to your Tracer. Usually a hit scan, but it could be an Echo, it could be a Pharah if you are trying to play double flex DPS, which is possible. You can play it. You'll have to watch out for enemy ashes, though, if you're going to be on an Echo or a Pharah. And then the support lineup, it really depends on your tank lineup. Obviously, don't play something bad for your tank. Don't play Juno Brig with don't play Juno with your Winston comps. Don't play, don't play Ana with your Sig comps. Some simple things like that of just, apply your basic team comp theory to your backline, support your front line, have characters that have a lot of characters that have different effective ranges so that you can take a whole bunch of different areas on this map, because this map is very, very difficult to stage properly for any sort of engagement. But if you can play it right and you know the game, not just Overwatch, but know the game figuratively speaking, if you've got the creativity for it, you can do wondrous things. So with that being said, that's more or less how to play Numbani. I kind of yapped a lot. This is my first time doing one of these map reviews, or map guides rather, for organized play, so I hope you guys enjoyed watching and listening to me yap for a while. If you have any questions, shoot them down in the comments, or if you're right here right now live, hold on, this way, post something in chat. And then Univa, anyone here watching, you can always shoot me a DM if I am actively a coach for you, and I can answer any questions that you guys have. But yeah, I thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. I believe next stream is going to probably be tomorrow. So whether it be coaching or playing, I don't know, but I will be streaming soon. So I will catch you guys later. Thank you so much. See you guys all later.